represents continuing education programs. So that might be a photography class or a cooking class or something of that nature, and you have the latest iteration of what they're offering in front of you. I did have a long and productive conversation with Denise Spellman, who's the director of New London Adult Education, to answer a few more of the questions. One of the questions from last meeting is who else partners with New London? So obviously New London uses New London Adult Ed. We do Lyme, Old Lyme, Montville, and Groton. And somebody asked a question, who does East Lyme use? And East Lyme utilizes Norwich Adult Education for their adult ed. In terms of what the money goes towards, so we budget $106,000 in next year's budget for adult education, and it's been around that number for a number of years. And you know, I talked to Denise and asked her, you know, what does the money go towards essentially? And obviously staffing is a big piece of that, and that would include teachers and administrative staff for the program. There are 50 staff members that work in New London Adult Education, many of them hourly. I know we have daytime teachers who teach in that program at night. You know, teach in the adult ed program at night. Obviously materials, textbooks, supplies, computers, technology. It also goes towards any leases or rents. They run 8 different sites throughout southeastern Connecticut for adult education. They utilize Waterford High for some of their programming, but they do run 8 sites. It was enlightening to talk to her. I've worked in districts where we ran our own adult education, and I can tell you this is a pretty robust program. It runs a full day from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. at night. As I mentioned, 8 sites throughout southeastern Connecticut. They average about 600 to 1,000 enrollees yearly in the mandated programs, and you know, our numbers vary in those mandated programs from 160, 130s, 190s, and so on, and then obviously other towns partake as well. And then there's hundreds, if not more than 1,000 in those non-mandated programs, because Waterford have averages anywhere between 400, 500, 600 a year in those programs. They provide workforce readiness and job training. They partner with the Eastern Workforce Investment Board to offer programming. They do whole family programming for parents, children, birth to 3 services. They do programming for ex-offenders. You know, some other things that I'm just kind of rattling off, some things that interested me. They provide babysitting services so parents can access those programs, and child care isn't an impediment to taking those classes. There's a social worker in the program for people who access adult education, and there's even a nurse on duty. So it's a pretty comprehensive program. So I wanted to make sure that I reported back to the board on New London Adult Ed. Can I answer any questions on that before we move on?
Thank you for getting that information.
No, yeah, no problem. It was good for me too, because our residents do access it, and it's I certainly know the high school end of it when you have students who access that program out of high school or during high school, but the post-high school access was enlightening to me. So we have some categories tonight. Obviously, staff is the biggie tonight. That's the one we're going to start off with. Before we jump into the actual budget page itself, Joe and I put together an overview that we thought it would be helpful to provide some context as we go in. So this current school year that we're in right now, we have 250.25 certified FTEs. That's what that line represents. Well, no, we budgeted that. Post-budget, so post-RTM approval, in June, the Board of Ed authorized me to address a class size issue at Oswegatchie. So that was added after the budget process. And with ESSER funding, we added back in a high school math intervention teacher, and that was able to avoid a reduction in force or a layoff. And that is primarily, almost all of it funded by ESSER. But those are FTEs. So when you think about the budget of 250, it's really 252.25 in actual terms on the ground today. Now we go into what does the next iteration of the budget look like. This budget recommends the reduction of 2 high school English teachers, a high school social studies teacher, and a high school science teacher, primarily due to enrollment. I know some of this dovetails with the ad hoc class size and course offerings committee. But this budget does see the reduction of 4 high school teachers. The high school in-school suspension monitor, which I'm gonna get into when we talk about non-certified staff support services, but it's always been housed in the certified staff, and it's not a certified position. So as we restructure that position, we move that FTE to non-certified support services, which is the next category. In this budget is an additional pre-K teacher, which will give us 5 pre-K teachers for next year. The goal is for that classroom to be at Quaker Hill, and that's really to address increases in really birth to 3 special education needs coming out of that. When you look at the evolution of this program, it's pretty exciting to see it go from 1 classroom to 5 classrooms. And to address pre-K enrollment, one of the things that we have not done is looked at FTEs in special areas. We've added 5 pre-K classrooms in this budget, through the course of the years. It will now be at 5. We've not addressed art. 2 of our elementaries had .9 art teachers. This would bump 2 of them up to 1.0, really to address the addition of pre-K through the years, which we haven't addressed.
So do the art teachers in the building just now service the pre-K kids too?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what was that, a point, what?
They, 2.9 art teachers will now be 1.0. So the 2.1s give you a total increase in art FTEs of 0.2. Year over year, it's a reduction of 2.0, about 2.0 FTEs. And you can kind of see the history over the last, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 years of certified FTEs, from a high of 261 to where we are today at 248. And this is a standard page in the budget book, but we thought it was pertinent to tonight.
Very good.
If there's any questions about that, we'll answer it. If not, we'll actually dive into.
I'm glad to see the Quaker Hill situation, because I think Quaker Hill felt left out with Osagachi and Great Neck. And certainly our pre-K classes with the ad hoc committee, we know that they are expanding. So I think that's a good call personally.
Yeah, and it will save, our goal would be to accommodate all Quaker Hill pre-K kids at Quaker Hill, to avoid the busing across
Right.
town that we
Right.
have been doing. We're looking at potential residual bus savings there if we're not busing kids across town, and kind of special transportation, so that might be a side benefit down the road. But without further ado, we can jump in to the budget pages. 111, salaries certified. I don't know how you want to do this, if you want to touch every line, if you want to go page by page and ask questions that
What's
you might
easier for
have
you?
on that page.
What's easier for you, Tom? To tell you the truth, I wasn't able to look at it because it was so tiny, so.
Yeah,
so-
Joe, do you have this on the, can you bring this up on the screen?
That's a help.
And
Not at that size. You know, it might be good if you just kind of scan the page and say, well, why is that up 24,000, and why is that one down 49,000, and that sort
Right,
of thing.
and I generally look at the percent columns and go with it there, so if you can kinda.
It might be a little laborious if we touched every line, but we can kind of
Right.
go through
How about,
some highlights.
so the art must be the it must be, the 46.95% must be, this teacher Art Oswagachi.
Yeah, so that
Is that what you just got finished talking about?
partially, but that particular teacher, besides going from .9 to 1.0, will see a degree change,
Oh, okay.
step.
Oh, okay,
And then GWI.
okay.
So that encompasses three categories.
And Great Neck Math is a 178.28% raise, increase?
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask Joe to speak to that one. I forget why that is up.
Can we do this before we
Yeah, of
go into
course.
Marcia's thing? Can you first, just so we're all on the same page, break down the first line so then we.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So then we're.
Joe, you wanna walk us
all
across
good.
the columns, using teacher art, Great
And
Neck,
if you
for
want,
example?
if you want to use Marcia's question, that's fine with me.
Okay, so the question, that she asked was in teacher math, Great Neck. So the first column that you see, the $124,749.95 is the actuals that were paid out in compensation in fiscal year 2020. And the next year, fiscal year 21, we had $125,492. Now in the 21-22 budget, we had, if you remember, we had kind of changed how we were doing math, and we had reduced the FTEs. In addition to the reduction of the FTEs, there was $25,177 available in a Title I grant. So, in that line, at $23,925, you had a salary for an interventionist of $49,103, partially offset by the
How
Title
would
I.
you know how would we know about that salary of 49,000?
You wouldn't, that's
Okay.
in detailed backup.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
With
that's good.
literal names, I'm just trying to.
I got it.
So, it's important when as I blend into the change for fiscal year 23. So in fiscal year 23, the grant has disappeared. So that's why we're seeing a salary come up to about $66,570.
Because it's the $50,000 for the
A good
$49,000.
portion of the grant is
Right.
for the grant to disappear its entirety.
So it now falls on us.
Yeah. Grants are kind of all over the place. All right, Tom already talked to you about the Oswagachi change, how that was an individual went from .9 to 1.0, had a step change and had a degree change. Now, the degree change isn't truly incremental in this budget. It was planned down below on another line item last year. So really all you're seeing is the .9 and the steps.
So may I ask another question?
Yes.
Of course.
So when you talk, if you go above 2 up or 1 up from the question, teacher language arts, Great Neck, 169,898.
Yeah.
How are we to know how many teachers that represents?
That would be on another budget book page, FTE allocations. I know we've talked about trying to embed that number on these pages, and our accounting system doesn't really align with doing that. So you're talking teacher, language arts, Great Neck. How many individuals does that 76,000?
Well, he was going back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right,
So
well, pick
it could-
anyone. Let's go teacher classroom Oswagachi, $1,386,744.98. How many teachers does that represent?
All right, I'm sorry, please say which line it was again?
Teacher classroom Oswagachi.
$1,386,774.98.
So the FTEs there are 16.
And those are really your pre-K to 5 classroom teachers.
So, like, because this has individuals' names on it, I don't.
I get that. I don't care about their names. That's
And
it.
I think we had a similar question last year, and I think you gave us those numbers, but they weren't embedded in the budget, but you did give us the numbers.
Right,
Right,
right.
you had FTEs up on the right.
Yeah.
That's,
What do you think?
she stole the words out of my mouth. Like, I remember seeing the number. So, for.
But that was after we asked for it.
Right,
Right,
so
it
for,
wasn't in there at the beginning.
so for me, like when I see teacher English, Waterford High School, 960,000. I could care less about the names. The names mean nothing to me. But how many teachers does that represent? And then my follow-up question to that would be, so if there's 960,000 and there's 5 teachers, are there 5 teachers or are there 10 teachers? And then that goes back to class size, is how many kids are in, just using that line item to the English class.
Yep, those are pages in the full budget book that all board members get every year. That line, and relative to class size, we did 4 cores, to bring in class size at the ad hoc class size committee, and why I'm recommending these reductions. We saw in the ad hoc class size that the 4 cores at Waterford High, science, social studies, math, and English, hovered around 15 or 16 students per class. The reductions that I'm recommending, we'll bring those up. There'll still be sub 20 for the most part, which is what we're seeing pre-K to 8. Ultimately that would be the board's decision, whether to take that recommendation or, reduce more teachers or less teachers.
Well, for me, if I look at, again, I'll pick another one, teacher language arts for Clark Lane Middle School at 716,000. I don't want you to answer now, but how many teachers is that? So you can't, I can't.
No, that's fair, give me 5 minutes.
I
But
can't.
I have a question though, how does that help you? Wouldn't it mean, how does that help you to determine whether they're all
Necessary or not?
functioning and necessary
Well,
and?
because I would look at, this is what I would do. I would go Clark Lane Middle School, how many are in 5th grade, how many are in 6th grade, how many in 7th grade, whatever, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I would take that number that's in that building and divide it out and go, okay, there's 100 kids with 9 teachers, there's 10 kids in English class, why does he have 10 kids? Can he drop this by 1 and make the class size 15? That's what I would be doing in my head.
So that's the class size ad hoc.
Yeah, that's
committee.
the other.
Right, but I'm saying,
Right,
I would look at this and then I would say,
yeah.
how many kids, I've asked this question before, I go, how many kids are at Clark Lane? He says to us, he gives me the thing that says, there's 500 kids, and I go, what's the breakdown by grade level? Then he says it, and then I take that information, and I divide it out, looking at these categories, and go, okay, teacher classroom Quaker Hill, what's that represent? And I know there's 500 kids in Quaker Hill. So to answer your question, that's how I do it, because how else am I to, if I'm the checker, how else am I to check? Because I have nothing to check this against. To answer
You
your
do in the
question.
full budget book.
Right, but I'm
and-
saying before,
Yeah.
I get that, but before,
Yeah.
when we did this question
Came up, right.
came up, and that's how
Right.
I got,
And Chris, to your, I understand your logic, but you also have to understand that teachers are on different steps and get different salaries. And that is a big part, and we
I-
have a lot of teachers who are on top step.
right, I get
And so
that.
that is
And-
a very important factor, so you can't just divide
I-
number of teachers and salary.
I
and
agree
get
with
a-
you, but
And get
then
an ideal number.
I know that because you and I, to your question, or to your point, did negotiations. So in my head, I know the low step, I know the high step, and that factors into the conversation. So just like they don't want to talk about names, I know the low is 85, let's say, and I know the high is 102. So I take the median in my head and go, oh, it's 91. So I'm taking 10 teachers at this number that's there, dividing it out and going, that's the median, because I remember
Right.
the high and the low, to your question.
But unfortunately, our population is mostly high. It's not, by taking the median, you're not taking a realistic
Right, but
look at our school system.
correct, but I'm saying globally, I'm looking and knowing where they're at with, because we had this conversation about how many are at top step, how many are
Right,
not,
right.
to get to answer the
And it's
question.
about 80%?
About 80% of our teachers
Yeah,
are
that's what I
top
thought,
staff.
that's
Yep.
what I thought.
I think it's actually higher now, to be honest.
It could be, that was last
We haven't had any,
negotiations.
we haven't had any turnover.
So you can't go with medium.
I-
To make it a realistic.
Right,
number.
but understood, but I'm giving a
Right,
quick,
right,
fast,
Yeah.
and
Right.
easy.
So Joe is a wizard with Excel.
Yeah. Chris, I think this is right. I'm 99.9% positive. This is probably 2 hours of work that I did in 2 minutes.
It jives, Joe, because if you look at Waterford High English.
Yeah, it jives because
We're going
because I went in and I said -2.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Because I know the changes.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to bring up the ad hoc
'Cause the-
committee
so the
minutes,
back-
because that's
We haven't made all the.
all these questions
Right.
are right in
Yeah.
those minutes.
right, this does dovetail into ad hoc completely, you know. And it is the same basis
I
on
apologize.
ad hoc.
I should have remembered everyone this.
Right, but we looked at this information as ad hoc, so
Right.
we
Yep.
kinda already did the math on
Right.
how many kids in a class and.
Right,
And obviously, it's always in the budget book for the board's
Right.
deliberations, of course.
Yeah, but when we did this last year, these numbers you gave us here, is that correct?
That's fair. Yeah, you had asked, we had had a
Yeah.
meeting and then you had
Yeah.
asked for it again and I
Right.
completely forgot about it, to be honest with you.
So I have a question, like, if your example of the grant went away for Great Neck math,
Yep.
why isn't was there not a grant for the other math in Quaker Hill or the other math in Oswegatchie?
To be honest with you, it's somewhat arbitrary how they choose to apply
Oh.
the grants.
Okay.
We could spread it out, say the grant was 45,000, we could go 15, 15, and 15, or just say, the math teacher at Quaker Hill, we're gonna apply 45,000 to
If
that.
I'm designing a budget, the way that I would do it is have the total cost, be the cost, and then down below, there's 12 lines.
Yeah.
Title I grant, but that's not how they do it, and it's also not how the state takes the reporting. The state wants, that information actually presented netted, so they wanna know what line items, from what building did you apply this to?
Oh.
But again, I wouldn't mind doing that application at the end, it makes it hard to explain
Yeah.
simple little changes from year to year.
And then, what is the increase in this tech ed, Clark Lane? It's 860.
Are you on the first page?
I am.
Teacher, Clark Lane, Tech Ed.
near the bottom.
860.
680 or?
860.
Nice. 75,505.
Yeah.
Yeah. It goes from,
So you added additional services and split the time of a senior, teacher time between the high school and Clark Lane Middle School. We actually made it effective for this year, but it's budgeted for next.
Correct.
the split time. Okay.
Yeah, no increase. All the changes in FTEs were on that PowerPoint slide. There's no other changes in the amount of FTEs. So these would represent really a reassignment, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you guys actually talked about that right before school.
Yeah, I remember now that you say it, I just didn't know. Yeah.
But listen, I get it, there's a billion lines in this, and there's probably a lot of better ways to show it.
Tom, I remember, and you know, this is meeting number 60 out of how we've done this. Why do I remember when we were doing this that you gave us, and you know I'm into the one pager of the number of staff at the school versus the number of kids at the school by subject area. Didn't you give us that before?
Yep, that was in ad hoc class size. That would have been on November 18th, I believe. November meeting. high school, we even went down to the individual class period, section.
So you want, please? Now, yeah. Those are the class sizes. Here's class sizes. On the other side, probably. What is, Clark Lane, I'm on 800.
Thank you.
Yep, line 800. Clark Lane phys ed, I know you lost a season phys ed, but the, cost rate went up. And I know they hired a new person, which is probably lower step, but the rate went up, so is that because everyone else's
Yep, so
steps?
the individual who filled the vacancy in the phys ed department was a Waterford veteran teacher in another subject area, so this increase would represent, increases for the current, teachers in phys ed, 3 of them. It's 3 FTEs. And if you go back to 21-22 budget, 212,602. I forget. Yeah, we would have known. So that's a projection.
Let me
Based-
look up the individual's name. It's MG. That's the one that's driving it.
There's no MG in
Where,
phys ed.
where are you?
Oh, sorry, that's high school. I apologize.
800.
800,
So when you look at 212,602 for 21-22,
yep.
that represents a projection on the vacancy of our average hire. So
Okay.
we basically estimate master step 5. But it was filled by an internal transfer
Right.
of an employee who makes more than.
What
And
you
new
project.
person,
Gotcha.
and a new. Okay,
Exactly.
got it, yep.
So
Yep, so it's an adjustment on our projection from last budget, plus any raises the individuals get in that department.
Okay.
Any other questions on the first page?
Good questions.
Um, And what the, okay, the computer, I just lost it. Computer education, Clark Lane, that's a position that we removed.
680?
So we had a teacher retired in computer education, and we reallocated those FTEs to tech ed. So when you see, if you look at computer ed, minus 49,000, and then go down to
Oh,
tech ed,
That was my next question, thank you.
53,888.
Okay,
We'd said that a tech ed position better meets the needs of our kids in 2021 than computer instruction. So it's really a reallocation of an assignment.
what's the difference between computer and tech ed?
So computers would, focus on things like the old computer curriculum focused primarily on web page creation, how to navigate the internet, things like that. Tech ed would focus more on pre-engineering skills, coding, things of that nature.
Anything else for the first page? Move on to the second, if everybody feels comfortable. And so there in 100-01220, it talks about, it shows the 90% degree changes. Very interesting.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is the teachers give us notification that they're expecting to have that
Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
so we budget for it. But we don't plan it on their line items, not all of them come to fruition. But we'd expect to see this for a year, I mean, COVID happens, right?
I'm sorry, what, can you explain that in my
Degree
terms?
changes, their credentials are changing, so if you look
And
at
it
the
went
teacher's
down?
contract.
No, it went up.
Oh,
No, it went
sorry.
down.
It
down.
definitely
Went
went
down.
Down
Oh,
90%.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
Fewer
favorable.
people are taking
So
classes.
last
Got it.
year, we paid
Okay.
teachers $67,255 for advanced degree work
Yeah,
per their contract. Based on notification requirements in their contract for next year, we're projecting that to be $6,500.
okay, yeah.
And given them the small amount of turnover we have, I mean, that's not to be unexpected.
80 something plus already at the top. so-
Already at the top, there's
Yeah,
nowhere to go.
exactly.
Right. Teacher resource special ed,
With realignment between that and the support center, I believe.
Right, it's really a reassignment of an existing teacher. We're not cutting special ed teachers. That's, would be found down below under probably support centers, my guess.
yeah, I see that one up 15%. Teacher special ed support center. Is support center at Clark Lane, at Clark High School, at, where's the support?
It's at,
Where is the support?
We have support centers pre-K to
Oh, we
8
do? Oh, okay.
at the high school. Well, we have a high school support center as well, but, we're, you know, utilizing ESS to help us with that program as well.
So it's all
Yeah,
three-
these are
all
high
three.
needs,
Gotcha.
special ed students.
Gotcha.
What's teacher tag?
Talented and gifted,
We removed that, remember a few years ago, got cut
Yeah.
from the budget.
I think that happened when
Might have been
2020,
Quite a while ago.
when
Yeah.
I think that spring sustained a $470,000 cut from the
Yeah.
RTM.
Yeah.
It would have gone in that
Feels
budget
about right.
cycle. Would have been
2000.
May of 2020.
if you wanna remind everyone, that doesn't excuse us from still having to identify talented and gifted.
Correct, we're required by law. Yep.
Anything else on the second page? We can move on to the third.
So those two pages end certified staff, so if you go to the bottom of the second page, you will see, total dollar increase of $371,000, 1.57% increase. Had we not reduced 4 teachers at the high school, and again, that was, my recommendation is based on enrollment, that line would be $280,000 higher for a total increase of $650-ish.
Yeah.
Where do those
And another
four,
whole percent.
Correct.
where do those 4 teachers go? You'll put them in other spots, they're retiring?
We only have 1 classroom teacher retirement next year. So there will be rifts and potential layoffs. We have 1 classroom teacher retiring, pre-K to 12, and 1 special ed teacher, pre-K to 12 retiring, only 2 retirements.
When do they have to let you know?
December 1st.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they can retire after that, but they lose out on some incentives.
Okay, third page, paraprofessionals.
Before we jump in,
Oh,
we're
okay.
gonna show you another
Okay.
slide. No, that's perfect. Here's the ups and downs related to non-certified. Last year, in our budget, we had 174.53 FTEs. In this budget, I am recommending elimination of 5 computer lab paraprofessionals. We lost a net 2 on the IT realignment with the town, so we had an 8-person department in IT that was a shared service. It is now 5 Board of Ed and 3 town employees. And you're probably saying, well, why isn't that 3 and not 2? Because the board is aware in a memo, I'm realigning the auditorium coordinator position within the IT department. So these equal 3. but it's three within IT and now putting the auditorium coordinator in that department. Recommending the elimination and the subsequent restructure of the LTS ISS Perkins coordinator position, so that position is eliminated in our budget, and that has been realigned to mirror the in-school suspension program at the middle school. And you're probably saying, well, two, if you remember back, go back one slide, Joe. Not sure why this has been housed and certified, it's not a certified position, so put forward one slide. So this two in-school suspension monitor represents moving over the ISS monitor at Clark Lane to support services and restructuring the LTS ISS Perkins position. And then adds in this, but from last year's budget to this budget, we have continual COVID needs around supervision of students, including already in this year's budget, and I'm recommending continuing it, high school hall and cath monitors, and additional playground aid time. So that represents about a net decrease of 6 employees in support services.
The 5 computer powers.
Yep.
Is that in the elementary school and the middle school?
And high school. So that's really in response to changing landscape as opposed to just saying, oh, we have a budget increase that is intolerable, let's eliminate positions. This is really around a model change. So 18 months ago, well, let me put it this way. 18 months later, post-pandemic, now 22 months later, we are now a one-to-one district. We were not a one-to-one district 18, 20 months ago. Prior to the pandemic, particularly in pre-K to 5, 3 computer labs, one at each elementary, computer lab paraprofessional. Students would go to the computer lab once, twice a week for computer instruction, so they didn't have a device in the classroom. Now with one-to-one, all day long, we are looking at embedding that computer instruction within the classroom environment. At the middle school and high school level, the model for the computer lab has been a little bit different. Pre-one-to-one, if an English class was working on essays, let's say, and they needed to finish their essay, all right, you 3 go to the computer lab at the middle and high, finish your essay. Maybe a kid didn't have a device at home, et cetera, et cetera. Those were really a drop-in model, for lack of a better word. Or a teacher could take a whole class down there and the para was there to help out and assist that teacher. In a one-to-one model, we are saying we're not seeing the volume of kids at middle and high do drop-ins in those computer labs, because they have a one-to-one device all day long, you can do that work, within the classroom. So at the elementary level, we will be embedding that computer instruction within the classroom. We do have 2 tech specialists in the district who work across pre-K to 12, and they'll obviously be involved in facilitating that transition in the model change. We do not anticipate any unemployment exposure with the 5 paras, as we're currently sitting on at least 5 para vacancies now due to staffing shortages during the pandemic, and typically over the summer we see turnover within the paraprofessional ranks. So that's the background as we head into page 3, support services. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of time to explain.
Oh, absolutely.
You'll see those 5 computer lab paraprofessionals reflected at the top of the page there, 21,000, 19,000, 21, and so on, 28,000 down the bottom.
So obviously the biggest number that we have on the sheet is the para educators. This is maintaining the same head count year over year. It's 82 paras in the school. I don't know if you guys will recall, but as we were the spring of 2020, we weren't able to use any of that tutor money. So in last year's budget, we used, I wanna say it was upwards of $200,000 of that IDEA money to offset some of the paraeducator costs, which is why we had a budget that was sub 0.75 last year. We don't have that same volume this year. This year's grant, I think we're only looking at 90,000. So there's a little bit of an offset there. And also, I mean, we moved some of the higher cost individuals, like if you look at the line items for the paraprofessional computers, these are or higher step individuals. So they've moved down to the main para line, and we removed the bottom, the lower forecasted salary estimate that we had in there.
Tell me about library, tell us about library assist, Great Neck, Oswegatchie, et cetera,
Sure, so our elementary schools are not staffed by certified librarians, actually, and the middle school as well. K-8, these are in the secretary's bargaining unit, and they manage and maintain our libraries, pre-K to 8. At the high school level, they assist the certified librarian in the maintenance and operations of the library. So those are within the secretary's bargaining unit.
So at the high school, there's a librarian plus an assistant.
Correct.
Is that needed?
Yeah, this has come up in previous budget discussions. I think as recently as last year. We certainly think so. It's a big operation with and with the introduction of capstone projects and the research component related to that. The administration has maintained that it's certainly warranted, and during budget season we can certainly discuss that.
You said that, I see it's here now, end school suspension, LTS Perkins, 57-212-68. You said you restructured that and realigned that. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So you will see that line is zeroed out in next year's budget. The individual in that position has resigned, so that position is vacant as of right now, and we're looking to fill that. We are filling that at $19,000 a year. For the in-school suspension portion of that. The LTS portion of that position, we are in negotiations with the teachers union to make that a teacher supplemental, probably somewhere in the $2,000 range. And the Perkins part of this will be part of an existing employee's job in the building.
Going back, the LTS hours, are they being kept digitally
Yep.
these days?
Yep, we've implemented mobile serve platform, and that is being used, which is why we think a teacher supplemental makes sense in that much of it's being automated.
And you also zeroed out the auditorium manager and restructured that.
Correct.
Any other questions?
How many secretaries at the high school? How many employees is that?
That represents, so there's 2 in the main office, 1 for the principal and assistant principal. There's an attendance secretary, a guidance secretary, another secretary for the other assistant principal. So that's 5? Yep.
Thank you.
So the secretary
And athletics?
in W, secretary further down is not one of those 5. Is that secretary on 980,
980.
right before secretary for athletics.
I thought that was the 5.
That is the 5.
Oh, then
That-
what's central office staff?
Where's the
That's up
980?
here.
Where's the 980?
Oh, that's here.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
And secretary athletics, that's an
Athletics is a
Guidance is also
district
separate.
department
Okay.
that supports middle and high.
Gotcha.
And elementaries to a limited extent.
Right.
Secretary guidance is
Oh, right.
a coordinating.
Okay. Thank you.
And then secretaries, special ed, is that just one person?
That is in the, district special ed office. I'm just trying to find that on
Sorry, it's
the
up at
sheet.
the top, 244.
Guidance.
244, right after physical.
Yep,
therapy.
special ed, yep, so that is, that represents, staff in the district special ed office, and that represents 2 full-time year-round employees, and I believe a 10-month employee, so a total of 3.
Is that's district-wide?
That is pre-K to 12,
Right.
special ed,
Right.
about 450 special ed students we have in our district.
Anything else? Turn the page and go to, total salary support.
The top of this page finishes this category.
With a 2.04% increase.
Again, you see the.
The IT is a little bit tough to follow, there's a lot of movements around. Just because we're, with the splitting of the department,
Right.
much of this year's budget numbers were offset by a transfer from the town, so the way that we realigned it, you'll see like a $40,000 increase on computer engineer, $5,700 on the computer technician, and then the $15,000 increase in the IT secretary. That person's not getting a raise. The
Yeah.
town used to used to credit us back with 50%. In totality, this line plus the line for, auditorium manager, it works out to about a $5,000 increase.
Because of the savings.
Well, cause that position is actually it's in this
Okay.
bucket.
And then obviously you see the 2 in-school suspension monitors at the bottom, budgeted at $18,624.
And, the security at the high school, how many are there, 2?
2.
Is that through our contract with the, Waterford
No.
Police?
No, those are SROs, that's in a
Oh.
different, line in the budget. Those, SROs are technically police department employees. We do, I think next year is 55,000 or 60,000 for SROs, but that's not in this line, this is a different line.
It was back.
It was back.
Yeah.
It was 40,000 in 1920, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's been going up
It's
5,000. I think this
52,500.
year it's only supposed to go up 2.
52.5.
Yes.
2.5. But we actually do have a schedule now on what the increases are for the next 4 years.
And then, I know I said this last year, I'm gonna say it again, it's not a lot, but I never see the crossing guard at the middle school. I really don't know what they do.
Yeah, so I had contemplated removing that several years ago. The, challenge, and I immediately got a call from, the chief at the time and said, you don't wanna do that. I said, tell me why. Because a,
Police officer can't,
Always
yeah.
be there for.
And a crossing
Yeah.
guard can't direct traffic, and a police officer cannot always be there either, so, she is there at arrival and dismissal time, and then helps, even with late buses, so, I can assure you that, you know, she is there, and the individual punches in and punches out, because there's actuals there, and Joe's office does payroll, so. I can assure you the person does work.
no, she is,
Yeah.
okay, great. there is an assignment of the person getting off midnight shift that has to do traffic, and that's their job, to do traffic after midnight shift. So, and it's assignment, and I understand if there was a major issue, that maybe they wouldn't be able to cover that assignment, but,
If there was a blackup of traffic somewhere else, is that what you're saying?
I mean, if there was
Or
a fire or accident or
Yeah.
something, but I'm sure that someone from the school, like the Danny Lane or, you know, Officer
Yeah.
Lane or someone could, I don't know. Again, it's peanuts in comparison, but
Certainly good discussions to have, for sure.
maybe worth another discussion, because I know it's an assignment of an officer, so.
Total budget increases, in this particular area of, support services is $129,000, up 2% year over year. Again, you see the elimination of 5 paras, the realignment, 5 paras is about $100,000. The realignment of the ISS-LTS, saves us about $40,000. Joe mentioned some differences in, grant funding, you know, without any modification, if we just simply rolled over this line would be, you know, high twos. Next category is student worker vocational. You will see a sizable, increase there. The primary function of this line goes to support wages for our 18 to 22 program, 18 to 22-year-old program who work in work placements. We're required by law to pay them minimum wage. So that's part of the increase. The other part of the increase is when our new director of technology was hired, he proposed a student intern program within the department for Waterford High students to get experience in IT and also help us now that we have, you know, 2,000 more devices in the district, and handling some of that.
So those salaries are in here too?
Those limited number of hours a year, I forget how much.
It's not much at all.
Couple.
Yeah, it was like,
100
Yes.
hours?
It was like 100 now. I don't even think it was that high, but.
Yeah.
But the
And
primary.
Is that at minimum wage also?
Yes, we have to pay minimum wage. And, you know, I think those are, again, nice opportunities for our kids to get some experience, real world experience, and, you know, help out with meaningful work in the district. But most of this increase is due to student headcount in the transition program going up next year and us expecting increased wages.
What is our number now?
I could get numbers on that. I don't
I'm
wanna
just interested.
quote it off the top of my head.
Do you think it went up by 2 or?
It will go up by more than that next year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't wanna shoot from the hip. I thought we had like 11 now, and 6, 7.
Yeah, it's
It's a big number.
sizable.
Can we go up by like 5?
I think 6.
Oh.
I think, don't write it
Yeah.
down.
I'll get numbers and
Okay.
email the
I
board
can't
on
be
that.
trusted.
So, yeah, that's like 50% increase in population.
Next one is temporary pay certified.
Yeah, so starting off, mostly just contractual, 2% increases that are in the contracts.
These are the stipends for coaches.
Right,
They are.
Correct.
the first one, 1070.
And then the next line is stipends for coaches at the middle, substitute teachers level funded,
And there's
slight
no reason to expect there to be a rate, to increase that number. And quite frankly, I think we'd have a tough time rationalizing a higher number with the limited availability of subs.
The Norwich superintendent doesn't think so. $260 a day she went up to.
Are they really?
Yeah,
What
there's
do
a
we
regional
get?
story coming out in the day, so I'm anxious. We're at 120.
She, last week she just went up to $260 a day.
I think the technical system is
Really?
165.
Okay.
Not
not 260.
Not when you're competing with
But I know the
260.
day is doing a
That's why-
regional story on this, might come out this weekend, because I was asked for our rate, so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how we compare. I mean, mostly this year, we're staffing with building subs who we've locked in 5 days a week, all day long, guarantee them
What
work.
is it nowadays here?
Do we still go through an agency?
So
120.
building subs,
120.
120, but the building subs are higher.
125,
125.
not a seismic.
Do we
It gives
still go
them-
through an agency?
We do not, we
Oh,
do
okay.
it in-house.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
What's that?
I made 50 a day when I did it when I was young.
I can remember when it was
ago.
20.
I know. Alright,
You just,
so,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, the first one is, you said coaches?
Yep,
Yes.
those are athletic coaches, stipends for the high school, and then the next line is the middle school.
And, is there a rate for that per sport?
Part of the
per-
contract.
Part of the
Yeah.
contract.
It's right, it's inside the
Contract.
We
contract.
negotiate that every 3 years with the union.
So that's like, if you teach English and you coach basketball, you get 5 Gs. You teach social studies and you coach girls volleyball, you get 4 Gs.
But if you're coming in from the outside?
Same number.
Same.
Same.
But it's gotta be posted, I'm speaking for them, it's gotta be posted on the inside first before it goes to the outside.
You got it.
Got it, okay. Alright,
Call attention to one line, you see tutor, in-school suspension, intervention, negative 36,000. That's the middle school position, that individual retired during this current school year that has been resized to 18,624. So that's really cut it in half from 36,000 to 18,000.
Teacher summer,
That's,
40.
So that's,
yep, that's summer school, summer academy.
so that's not a reduction in services, that's a utilization of the money in ESSER three. This amount, is actually $50,000, $55,000 higher. In ESSER three, we assume 2 components, we assume $90,000 over 3 years associated with higher ed, and then $75,000 over 3 years, associated with, I don't remember, I think it was just expanded services for the, for the elementary kids,
So when you see 95,000 and change this current budget year and 70 for next year, we are not decreasing services, we're writing off 25 and change to ESSER three.
55.
That says 25, but.
No, it's a $25,000 reduction.
Oh, got it.
But we've reduced what we expect to spend on this project
Got it.
by $55,000.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
No worries. Just important to know that, because these items, so items like this is a three-year,
Grant.
use of the grant.
Yeah.
So in 3 years, someone's gonna have to decide whether or not we wanna continue to offer those
Right.
services or whether we dial it back.
So, temporary pay certified, about 2%?
2% decrease.
Yep.
That line is down 68,000 and change.
I have to say, everything we've brought up in past years for cuts have kind of all been cut, or worked themselves out. All of our,
You try to address some of these as they come open.
yeah.
It's obviously easier when they're open than impacting current employees.
Making it hard.
Yeah, it's actually a 6.3% reduction. I don't know why that says 2.
What was that, Joe? Say that again?
It's a 6.3% reduction. We reduced $68,000 off of the $1 million budget.
Yep.
I apologize.
So how did it come out to be 2?
Honestly, don't know.
We'll blame Excel.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna get revised. So what about the long-term disability, is that, what
That's
happened?
contractual, so that went out to bid.
Okay.
I mean, in the whole scheme of things, it's $230, but percentage-wise, it looks better.
Yeah,
How do you have to carry unused sick time year after year?
It depends. So, yes, people can. Contracts have different limits on whether or not they're able to be paid out, but we can carry unused sick time, correct?
Much of those unused sick leave payouts have, been grandfathered out, meaning employees hired after X date.
Yeah.
I
So
think she's
we-
talking at the line at the bottom of the
I am
page.
the
Oh,
one
I
at the bottom.
apologize.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were moving down that far.
Oh, sorry. I'm
Yeah, so
jumping.
I thought you were talking in relation to long-term disability, why
No.
we don't offer short-term.
Oh, no,
No,
but.
she's going a different direction, no. So yeah, we still have some people, who work in the district that, based on their hire date, are still eligible for that. I know Chris and Marcia would be well aware of this from negotiations. Much of this has been grandfathered out.
And this is just carried year to year until it
That's
Until
budgeted
the
on
contract's
actual,
out.
contracts out.
So
Okay.
it's, yeah, it's based on gnomes.
Yeah.
A lot of these are actually individuals that chose to leave, early in the spring last year. So these are not the one retiree that we're talking about now, these are people that never returned in September.
Okay.
So while we budgeted for their salary in or the salary changes in their budget, we did not budget to, pay them out, so they couldn't get it on July first, they weren't entitled to it.
FICA is really a calculation based on employees. It's down slightly because we'll have less employees next year. Tuition and shoe reimbursement, contractual. Workers' comp is contractual, Joe?
Workers' compensation right now is, just a placeholder.
Yep.
So, workers' comp, the town is planning on putting out to bid our liability auto property and our workers' comp policy. We're currently with Kerma, which is a quasi-governmental, agency that's kind of underneath CCM. So, we're gonna test the market and see if there's better rates that are out there.
You see retirement incentive on the bottom of the
Yeah,
page.
I was
and
gonna
that-
ask about that. So are we offering a retirement incentive?
No, that is a contractual, offering in certain contracts, so,
Oh,
for
okay.
example, teachers, if they notify the superintendent by December first, and they're hired by X date, they get a $3,000 retirement incentive for letting us know by December first.
Yeah.
So, if they tell us in June, oh, I didn't tell you in December, but I've decided to retire, they wouldn't get the 3,000.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So it's incentivizes them to tell us by December first.
Okay.
Electricity is up, but I will tell you, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be a lot worse, or could be a lot worse if we didn't do the energy project that,
Have they saved us our $400,000 a year?
They're not there yet.
we thank Chris for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, they've actually been great.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Something should be open.
Equipment.
Equipment is down, obviously, year over year by 13,000.
We'll look at it if you want.
Yeah.
We just pulled up the electricity.
If you look at, equipment, where is
Tech
it?
plan?
Tech plan.
Second one.
Thank you, appreciate that. Some of that is reflective that we're moving some tech plan purchases to ESSER three.
Correct, teacher laptops.
Ah,
Oh, okay.
okay.
And in this item, we've been able to maintain so far, a board member's recommendation that we look into virtual reality learning. So we have the name of the company, and myself and I believe, Craig Powers will be sitting through a presentation on, virtual reality in the classroom.
Cool, interesting.
Fine, I bet you're excited.
Better be.
Everything else we've tried to hold, relatively flat, year over year. Just because other areas of the budget this year are, challenging. So we really tried to hold the line on equipment.
Yeah.
Where does, it fall in something, didn't we say something about the basketball court? Is that equipment or not?
That's a capital request.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember if I know we.
But I know a couple meetings ago, under athletics,
Right.
to Michelle's point, there was a request, of $30,000 $47,000, and we were discussing baseball field netting as well as a diving board, and my recommended budget does not include those.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because in both instances, the $37,000 estimate on the baseball netting turned out to be a $72,000 estimate.
Yeah.
And then the estimate on the diving board, the vendor said, this is going to last.
Yeah,
So-
aesthetically,
They said what? They
It's
said
They
what?
said
going to
it'll
last.
last. We have a few years.
Oh, okay.
aesthetically, it doesn't
Good.
look great, it's a little tired
But it still
aesthetically,
works.
but it's safe,
Oh,
and
That's all I
Very
need to
quick
know.
place to
this is
go.
not the budget.
And we only have 1 or 2 divers, so for 1 or 2 kids.
Certainly, if it was a safety issue, we would
Yeah,
address it,
no,
of
I know,
course.
no matter what the
Of
number
course.
of kids.
Well, safety, we already, if it was a safety issue, we'd already be fixing it.
Yeah.
Or close it.
Bite your tongue, Tom. You
It's
can't-
been a while since people have been picketing outside my house. I welcome that again.
All right, is there anything else for?
I want to just give you a preview. So this concludes all the budget categories of the whole budget. You're not going to see a final number. We still continue to work on it, but so now that we've spent over the last 2 months going through it, I just want to call your attention that as we go through this, 4 categories in our budget are just under 2.5%.
That's fantastic.
That means if the other 300 lines in our budget are flat, we'd be coming in at 2.4. The other 300 lines in the budget are not flat. So,
Yeah,
we're still working on it.
right.
When you look at professional technical services, increase of 393,000 year over year. Some big drivers in that category to refresh memories. One big driver in that category is nursing services. So we're seeing a slight increase in their rate. They've held us flat the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, the rate increase is going slow.
The other part of nursing services that's going up that you might recall is we have several students next year who will require a one-on-one nurse the entire day, all day long in school in their IEP.
Wow.
Those are 3 nurses at about 80,000 apiece. So
Wow.
$240,000 of this increase are for 3 one-on-one nurses for very medically fragile students who need that, and it's
Yeah.
our
Well,
responsibility
I'm
to
sorry.
provide that.
Will they be employees of the district or
No,
you'll
there will be
contract them
3
out?
through VNA.
Yeah, and let me ask you this,
Sure.
is it less expensive to make them employees or more to use the VNA?
Once you do that, you take over regulatory issues with
And,
them.
and you have to pay them benefits, and then what happens if it comes out of the IEP that you don't need them, right?
And we would need a nursing supervisor, which could be one of the 3 technically. Years ago, we did a calculation, it's essentially a wash, in-house or
Got it,
outsourcing.
okay.
So about 240,000 of that are for 3 one-on-one nurses. Another little bit of that is an increase on rates in nursing. 2 other big pieces of that are magnet, special ed costs are up, so for students who attend magnet and charter, we pay special ed costs, their paras, any service hours. And then we are upping athletic training services by about 20,000?
That was 12.
Could be 12,000.
Contract it out?
Yeah, we contract that out.
I think it's important, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
cut you
no.
off. I think it's very important that, and I'm not saying you're not going to say it, but in terms of like those nurses, that has to be like in big red letters.
Yep.
When it goes to the whole board.
Right.
Yep.
Because people
Yeah.
don't
They don't
understand
understand
that.
They don't
And
understand.
I get it, but I'm saying, you get it, but there are people who don't get it.
Right.
And you have to say, you should say, you have to go into some depth about going with the VNA or hiring them on your own, because if you hire them on your own, then you inherit them. I'm just saying,
Right.
people have to know that, and you have to speak to that, because that's gonna be a conversation piece.
It is, when you look at the total impact on our budget of about 240,000, it's a 0.5% on
Yeah.
51 million, just
Right.
under a 0.5%. So,
Which could go away in 3 years, which could go away in 2
Yeah.
years.
We've talked in previous finance meetings about the increase in health. It was much worse when we presented to you a month ago. It was about a $1.1 million increase. Working with our health benefits consultants and making some different assumptions, we're now budgeting at about 400,000 instead of 1.1
Wow.
million.
That was a good conversation.
It was.
So, we've changed our risk assumptions. So, in the past, we've been somewhat conservative. Now, the nice thing about conservative is you can kind of predict how you're gonna be next year. We are-
Conservative means you're assuming worst case scenario.
Right.
Well, I don't want it's more middle of the road, right? Because we still had a sizable increase this year,
Yep.
driven by both claims, changing in practices, and our excess
The
costs.
point I was trying to make, conservative means you're budgeting more
Yeah.
money.
Right.
That's what I wanted.
It's a number that I would always feel comfortable with, knowing that I wasn't gonna come back the
Yep.
next year. This is, in my opinion, this one is not conservative at all. This is cashing in, it's not a bad use of fund or anything like that, but it is taking out whatever contingency was in that number with the plan.
Okay.
So, we've already notified our health provider that, look, you need to shop our
Stop
excess
loss.
costs,
Yep.
or stop loss, insurance, and I need a quote from the state, or I'm sorry, I need quotes on what I'd be looking for if we were to go elsewhere, and I wanna look to shop this around the October timeframe. Cause I don't have the appetite next year to come back to you and say, remember when I said my number wasn't that conservative? Well, now we're looking at a 22% increase.
Yeah,
So, without having shopped it.
right.
And this is through discussions with the town. We pool health insurance with the town. We're both budgeting more on the aggressive assumption trend.
Okay.
Instructional salaries, you heard that tonight. That's up 300,000. Again, if we didn't reduce headcount, that would be up closer to $500,000.
Right, because all
More
the
than
contracts,
$500,000.
all the
Be
contracts.
closer to 600,000.
Right.
Support salaries up 135,000, again, without reductions and restructuring open positions, that'd be closer to 300,000. So those four categories alone account for almost a 2.5% budget, 2.5 budget increase for next year on 51 million. We are as you've seen, we're working to mitigate other areas of the budget to keep this as, as low as we can while still meeting the needs of kids.
Do we know what the town is mandating that everybody comes in?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't, no.
They're facing very similar problems, or pressures, I should say.
Challenges, yeah.
You know, commodities they're up. I mean,
Right.
on the electric side, our generation
You
rate.
just wanna get to that
He
electricity.
does. He wanted to show his spreadsheet.
No, because this is terrible.
It's okay.
Our generation rate went up 27%.
Wow.
We budgeted,
Wow.
0.07 in this current year, budget,
Well-
last year's budget.
Well, it wasn't budget, this is what our contract was for.
Yeah,
Wow.
Our contract came up in the month of December. We went out to bid with the town,
Uh-huh.
and this was the best price
Wow.
by a
So-
considerable amount. So, we're not gonna realize the savings that we had anticipated, mostly because we have rate changes of about 132,000. Having said that, we reduced our volume $311,000.
Wow,
So-
that's a great.
that's through the energy
That's-
project.
yeah.
That is the energy project. Now, I get it that there's a lease. We have a payment that we're gonna be making for 4 years. But at some point, 48 months from whatever day we start paying it,
Yeah.
we're gonna we will see a reduction.
Good,
This was a great project.
yeah.
No, you know what, no, Chris, to give credit, right?
Yeah.
I've had 1,000 salesmen come through the door telling me that they can do X, Y, and Z.
Get out
And-
the buses and I'll be happy.
Well, on that front, I've already reached out to state reps to see if there's any interest in, they're pushing money down to the states for,
Solar?
for electric buses.
Electric.
Oh.
Where they'll pay up to 75% of the cost of the buses.
Oh.
That's fine, if I have a 36-month lead
Sure.
time, we can look at doing that.
Yeah.
But Joe's point, if we didn't do the energy project, this 311 is in our budget.
Right, right.
Oh, yeah.
So,
What's a percent worth?
551,510,000, so you're talking 0.6. I mean, so instead of 2.4 on that other slide, we'd be at 3
Yep.
with electricity.
And Eversource gave me assurances on the natural gas front that we shouldn't expect to see a number over 20%. Said, okay.
It was,
So we brought
in
that.
early budget projections, 90% increase.
Well, yeah, that was
Yeah.
the commodity price.
Right.
By the way, they're starting to talk about shutting down, services for Texas again because of the rates.
All right, is there anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all, I'll get back.